Golden State Media Concepts Technology Podcast covers everything tech. The hottest mobile phones, tablets, games. We review it, rate it, test it. Whether you're Microsoft or Apple, Android or iPhone, we'll give it to you black and white. The Golden State Media Concepts Technology Podcast.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the GSMC Technology Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Mackenzie Jakewish, and thank you so much for joining me on today's episode. Today's episode is going to be focused on the top 10 worst tech of all time. So I have done the worst tech of the decade. I have done the worst tech at CES. I've done the worst kitchen, exercise, wedding, beauty tech. I've talked about all the bad. I've talked about all the good. But today I thought it would be a ton of fun just to give an overview of the top 10 worst tech products I could find online. And let me tell you, there's some doozies on here. There's some real bad ones, guys. So strap in, because we are going to talk about all of that and more on today's episode. Before we get into the worst tech products, though, I just want to remind everybody to please subscribe and write a review down below. I love reading your reviews because it gives me ideas of what to talk about on future tech episodes. So definitely write a review because I'd love to hear from you guys. All right, let's get into today's top stories. So our first story is that Amazon now has 150 million Prime members after their huge holiday season. It added more than 50 million subscribers in the past 2 years. Amazon attributes its particularly big swell of new Prime subscribers to the service's availability in Brazil as of last September. The company also notes that it has eliminated the cost that was originally $15 per month of Amazon Fresh, its grocery delivery service for Prime subscribers, back in October, adding another benefit to the subscription service on top of all of the TV shows that they have released in the past 2 years and the numerous other options that you have if you are a Amazon Prime subscriber, which I happen to be, and I can definitely say that I get those benefits all the time, and I absolutely love it. But the really interesting thing here is just to see how much it's really grown. A lot of that is due to their international availability now, like they said, in Brazil. But I really think it is just because they are always innovative, they are always pushing those limits, so people are finding more and more reasons to get the subscription and to be a part of the Amazon community. Let me know in the review down below and reach out through social media if you're a part of the Amazon community, and if you're not, what's been holding you back. Our second story of today is that the ex-HBO boss and Apple producer Richard Piper is looking to hire the Vice News chief. Josh Triangle, former executive producer of Emmy-winning Vice News Tonight, is in talks with Edwin Productions. The former HBO boss, Richard Piper, is seeking to recruit Vice Media veteran Josh Triangle to his production company, Edwin Productions. So it's really interesting to see how they are taking people from other tech industries and moving them from news of HBO, and how everybody's just sort of moving around and trying to find their new place in this new tech world. Our third story of today is that the coronavirus forces Apple and Google and other tech giants to take precautionary measures. So Silicon Valley is bracing for the coronavirus outbreak to impact the bottom line, as Google has closed its offices in China and Apple has said that its production will be affected. Google, which has 10 offices spread between the mainland China and Taiwan, has confirmed that they have been closed for the Lunar New Year, will now stay closed for the foreseeable future. On Tuesday, Apple CEO Tim Cook said the solution is emerging and we're still trying to gather lots of data points and monitoring it really closely. We have a wider than usual revenue range for the second quarter due to the greater uncertainty. So really interesting to see. I talked about it a lot in my marketing podcast as well, how the coronavirus is impacting the world outside of just obviously being a health scare, but it's impacting the tech world, it's impacting the marketing world, and it's impacting our world. So one, definitely be safe out there, everyone. But two, let me know your thoughts on Apple and Google having to close their doors in China, and what you think the future of tech in China will be as of right now. Obviously, I don't want you to tell me what you think the future of tech in China is going to be over the next decade, but right now this is very serious and it's being handled as such. So I'm very interested to see what will be happening over the next little while and how these companies plan on dealing with the outbreak. Okay, everyone, we're going to go ahead and take a short break from the podcast, but when we come back, we are going to get into our list of the top 10 worst tech products that I have found across the internet. So stay tuned for that, because you are listening to the GSMC Technology Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Mackenzie Jakewish, and I'll be right back.
Do you work in the world of marketing and advertising? Are you a media buyer or the owner of an agency? Have you been looking for a podcast to help stay on top of all the goings-on of those worlds? The GSMC Marketing News Podcast is dedicated to keeping you up to date on all things concerning marketing and advertising. Get the latest marketing news, from what major businesses have planned for the coming year to the newest trends in advertising, from podcasts, digital and streaming, to the old standbys of radio, television, and billboards. The GSMC Marketing News Podcast has you covered, whether you're a marketing agent or a business trying to expand your brand.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the GSMC Technology Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Mackenzie Jakewish, and thank you so much for joining me on today's episode. We are counting down the top 10 worst tech products I have ever seen on the internet. I have discussed the worst kitchen tech, the worst beauty tech, the worst exercise tech, but I thought we would do the top 10 worst tech. I dug deep into the internet, guys, and I have found some real doozies. So let's get right into that list. Number 1, the Samsung Galaxy Note 7, released in 2016. So I know I've talked about this one on the worst tech of the decade episode, but guys, we really can't let this one go down without talking about it more, because it literally started on fire. For those of you that don't know, didn't listen to that podcast, or have never heard of this, the Samsung Galaxy Note 7 was released in 2016, and it was, a really big hype. People were really excited about the fact that it was sleek, water resistant, it had improved its S Pen, it had a great camera, but then it actually started exploding and catching on fire while people had it in their pockets or beside their bed or in their bed. So it was a huge health problem, and people were obviously very upset that their brand new phone was catching on fire, but also just very embarrassing for Samsung that their brand new shiny phone was catching on fire. I put this as number 1 because although it is very famous, it is very famously horrible in the tech world, so it definitely deserves to be on our list for the top 10. Also, in the realm of catching things on fire, the hoverboard makes it as number 2 on our list. The hoverboard, which was released in 2015, was definitely a trend. People really loved it. People were very excited about the 2-wheel scooter. But although they were all the rage in 2015 for about 6 months, videos then started popping up of them catching on fire. Man, what was with 2015 and 2016 of just tech catching on fire? What happened, guys? But Amazon has cracked down on certain brands that were exploding, and the Consumer Product Safety Commission declared that hoverboards were unsafe in February of 2016. So if you see a hoverboard out now, it could be a novelty item from back in 2015, or it could be one of these new ones that have been declared safe by the Consumer Product Safety Commission. And so if you're buying one today, just make sure that they're checked, because again, they were catching on fire. So not worth it, guys. Not worth it to look as cool as people did on hoverboards if they're going to be catching on fire. Number 3 MSN Direct Smart Watches. So I thought this was really funny because the promotion that I saw for it had an actress who I don't even know her name promoting it, but she was like the main actress on the OC, for anyone that remembers that, which is really funny because this came out in 2004, which is also when the OC came out, so obviously very popular. But it was ahead of its time because obviously now we have smart watches, but this was just for MSN messaging. It cost $10 a month, and unfortunately it was just really bulky, and people already had smartphones that were doing much, much more, and also MSN was sort of like already going out of style. So carrying around this giant watch that looked like a giant laptop on your hand definitely faded away, but it did stick around for about 4 years. The last time people saw it was in 2008. Number 4, Oakley Thumb sunglasses, which came out in 2007. So I didn't even know these were a thing. But the thing that makes this so great, guys, is that Dog the Bounty Hunter was the spokesperson for Oakley Thumb sunglasses. So already I feel like you can get an image in your mind of what these things looked like, and I'm sure you're giggling along with me. But basically they were Oakley sunglasses, so already I hate them. But they were combined with an MP3 player, so they had little headphones attached that just poked into your ears, and they were $500. What? Who would pay $500 to have Oakleys that also had headphones? Guys, if you bought one of these and you're listening to this podcast and you're a really big Dog the Bounty Hunter fan, so you were just very offended at what I had to say about him marketing these, I'm sorry. I'll apologize for that. But I'm not going to apologize for the fact that these are on the list because they are $500 for sunglasses that are also headphones. What? That is pure nonsense. They look horrible. They cost way too much. No wonder they're not around anymore. I can't believe they were ever around. This should be number 10 on the list. I might have to change my list because I'm clearly getting passionate about this. I don't like them. We'll keep them as number 4 because there's some worse things on this list. But by far, this has been the one that definitely made me shake my head a little bit and wonder why anybody spent $500 on these. Number 5, the Microsoft Zune in 2006. So this was Microsoft really hoping that they were going to make a dent in the iPod market. And you know what? To be fair, a lot of people were very excited for the Microsoft Zune just to have another option other than the iPod because they were the same thing. They were the exact same thing. And I remember one year for Christmas, I went over to my cousin's house, and they had both gotten the Microsoft Zune, and they were really excited about it. And then literally a month later, they had an iPod. And they weren't the only ones who did that because the Zune just didn't offer the same features as the iPod. They weren't as sleek. You weren't able to do as much with them. You weren't able to, download the same amount of music or share it with your friends. They did have the option for Zune-to-Zune sharing, which worked only over Wi-Fi, but it fell flat because you could only play tracks you acquired 3 times within 3 days. And you also had to be near someone with another Zune owner, like you couldn't share it amongst iPods, and everybody else had iPods. So this was just more of Microsoft trying to make a jump, trying to succeed, trying to be the Pepsi to iPod's Coke, and it just didn't work. It's not as bad as the Oakley Thumb sunglasses, but it's also not great because it didn't work. Sometimes things just don't work. And that's okay. I will forgive Microsoft, but I will not forgive Oakley. I'm going to switch those 2 on the list for sure, guys. So keep that in mind. Okay, everyone. We're going to go ahead and take a short break from the podcast. But when we come back, we're going to get into the rest of this list. So stay tuned because you are listening to the GSMC Technology Podcast brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Mackenzie Jakewish, and I'll be right back.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the GSMC Technology Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Mackenzie Jakewish, and on today's episode, we are counting down the top 10 worst pieces of tech ever to have existed. And I'm not being dramatic, guys. I did some real deep dives, and I did a lot of research to try to find top 10 horrible pieces of tech. Some of these are just horrible because they failed due to some technical errors, but some of them literally catch on fire. What? That is crazy. That is nonsense. Of course they're making the list if they caught on fire. All right, guys, let's get right back into today's list. So, number 6, the Motorola Roco E1, which came out in 2005. So before Apple really got into that smartphone market, it tried partnering with Motorola to create the Roco E1, which cost, by the way, $250. It was dubbed the first iTunes phone. So basically it did everything, almost everything, that our smartphones currently do, but you could only download 100 songs, and it only allowed you to download tracks over the web. So consumers immediately didn't love the fact that although it played music and was able to call people, which is what our phones do now, it wasn't that great of a product because it cost a lot of money and you were only able to download 100 songs? What? That's silly. That's crazy. So definitely took a bit of a tumble. But don't worry, Apple's doing fine, which is why I felt like it was okay to include this on the list. Number 7, the QCat barcode reader from 1999. So let me just take you through what this is. You take your little gadget that does look like a cat, you scan a barcode in a magazine, then you connect your device to your computer, and then it'll put you on the website. But why wouldn't you just type the URL in? This is a lot of work. Maybe it would have worked if you could have saved the URLs for later and then browsed through all the ones you saved throughout the day. But no, it works within a matter of minutes. You have to do it immediately. So a lot of people, I think, bought it as more of a joke because it does look like a cat. It looks like a very interesting cat too. I encourage you to go look it up because this isn't a cute cat. This is a weird futuristic hairless cat. But I don't know, in 1999 maybe URLs were a big issue and people didn't want to have to type them in, but I don't personally see a world where this was ever needed and it was just more of a hassle. Real cute though, real cute if you like cats. Number 8, of course this was going to be on the list. Guys, I'm sure you've been waiting for the words to just escape my mouth. Number 8 is Clippy. So for all of you Gen Zs out there listening, Clippy was a personal assistant that was on your Microsoft computer. So it would help you with daily tasks such as introducing you to Windows 98. It was intended to help you write resumes, help you open web pages, maybe remember URLs for you since that was a really big problem apparently in 1999 and continued on throughout the years perhaps. But it was more annoying than anything. I remember taking computer classes and he was just jumping around on my screen. By the way, for those of you that don't remember, he was a paperclip and he would just jump around your screen and he was just more annoying than anything else. Eventually he was wiped from all computers, but don't worry, Clippy is alive and well as he lives as a meme on the internet forever. So rest in peace, Clippy. Hope to see you again. Never. Goodbye. See you later. I don't want you on my computer, but I'll take you as a joke. I'll take you as a joke on the internet. Number 9, the Puck Mouse. So the Puck Mouse was Apple trying to come up with a more unique design. They definitely did pioneer the mouse and the desktop format that we're all familiar with today, but they didn't have it perfect right away. It definitely did start as a round puck. The reason it's called the puck mouse, guys, it looked like a puck. And I remember, like, the popular girls in school always had these, and I remember being like, why? Like, I don't see how that's useful. It came out with the Mac in 1998, but it was discontinued shortly after in 2000 because it didn't work as well as a normal mouse. It was super hard to hold. Imagine just holding a giant puck instead of the slim mouse. Like, that doesn't feel relaxing on your hand. You can't access things as well. So it's a bit of a fail. But again, guys, Apple is doing fine. It's okay for us to make fun of the puck mouse disaster because they're doing fine. Number 10, I'm sure you all knew I was going to say this because I talk about my hatred for this tech piece on almost every podcast I do. But number 10 is the Segway. I will never be able to get over how silly, how ridiculous the Segway is. And the fact that at CES they introduced a brand new Segway tells me that we're not going to be losing this piece of tech anytime soon, which is why I feel totally appropriate putting it on this list, because if Segway's refusing to get rid of this product, I'm going to refuse to stop talking about it. I will bring it up in every context I can to talk about how silly of a product it is. Maybe that's mean. Maybe the people of Segway will be coming after me. I just think they're really silly, and I'm not a fan. Not a fan. Personal opinion. Let me know what you think the worst piece of tech ever to exist it is in the review down below, or reach out through social media because I would love to hear from you. Okay, everyone, that is it for today's podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in and listening to the GSMC Technology Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Mackenzie Jakewish, and I'll see you next time.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Technology Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.